Welcome back for part 2 of Floyd's story. The first episode was how Floyd's world got flipped upside down and how he received new glasses to how he saw the world and what role he wanted to play in it. This episode is how Floyd kept to his promise to living life consciously and followed his own personal compass of what he felt love and genuine care for, and how he mastered his yearly mission statement after zooming in on what he had done the year that had passed. My brother is the most dedicated person I've ever met, not only dedicated to his goals, but also to who he is as a person. He is brutally honest with himself and always putting himself in uncomfortable situations in order to grow. I hope this episode motivates you to look at life and see where drive, discipline, and happiness is missing. Are you pouring your energy into something that you have genuine love and respect for? If not, what small steps can you take to get there? Well, that's enough from me, guys. Let's jump straight in. Welcome to the Honesty Policy Hour. I'm your host, Stephanie Marie, and it's time to put everything on the table on this beautiful journey of healing all areas of our lives, one deep conversation at a time. Hello.
Hello.
How are ya?
I'm good.
Welcome back.
Part 2.
Part 2. How'd you feel after listening to the first one?
Don't like my own voice.
It's hard, isn't it?
It's tough.
Yeah, it took me a while to took me like a good, 4 or 5 episodes to get over the fact that I was listening to my voice, because everyone says that as soon as you jump on, everyone's like, oh my god, I can't listen to myself.
Yeah. I am going to try to stop saying ums.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Take more conscious pauses.
Yes, good.
It's like, when I was listening to myself, I was like, stop saying It just doesn't sound that good.
Well, it's the same as taking a break, isn't it?
It is. Be comfortable with the pauses.
Well, no one's comfortable with it. Everyone likes to fill it in with more useless words.
I am comfortable with it now.
You are?
Yes. If I pause too long, it's because I'm nervous.
So, just recapping on the first episode. So, we're talking a little bit about the beginning of your journey.
Yep.
How you were quite a sickly child.
Yep.
And the journey that you had through your teens. And then when you started getting more sick, you had an experience in hospital that completely changed your world.
Yep.
Your relationships with the women in your life, including me and mum. And yeah, that's kind of where we were up to, I guess. Just kind of to de-shed all the stuff that you were about. So like I said this previously, we go through a journey where we live our lives the way we were taught to live through our parents. And then we find what motivates us and what we like doing in our life. But somewhere in between, we go through that really uncomfortable de-shedding period where we're trying to find who we are. Yes, parents taught me this. However, it doesn't all relate to me. That all doesn't serve me. Some does, some doesn't. And, some go through that a lot earlier than some. Some go through it a lot later, and some unfortunately never go through it.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to hear how you went through it at such a young age.
Definitely. Yeah, the conventional path is, getting into work or getting into your career and getting, good at business and creating economic stability, etc., etc. I kind of took the opposite route. I feel like I was more forced to. Afterwards, after that experience, I went back into university, and I was doing a landscape architecture and architecture double degree my first year, and I went back and I was only able to get extensions for my assignments for how long I was out for, but not for the next one. So I had 2 loads of assignments to do at once in a short amount of time, and I couldn't keep up. It was just so stressful, and I was also just happy to be alive. And so I ended up dropping out and doing a little bit of work for 6 months, and then getting back into university again, doing urban and regional planning or town planning. And it was interesting because, as we mentioned on the last podcast, going through spirals and rabbit holes of all sorts, the mind had been cracked open. And so, going into, health, some wild theories and just...
Well, you got given new glasses.
For sure. I promised myself that I would look at everything from scratch again. I take nothing for granted. A lot of the preconceived notions that we understand about life come from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I promised that I would look at everything from scratch as a adult. And so, for example, birthdays. As you know, I don't celebrate my birthday. Or things like Christmas or Easter. Anytime someone would say that, I'd be like, I'm going to think about that again. What is it? I don't want to celebrate things if I don't really know why I'm celebrating them. So I'd investigate everything. And it wasn't really an efficient way to go through life. It's just, analysing absolutely everything. But it kind of turned to serve me a little bit later on. And so, going through this insane rabbit hole of everything, and then trying to do town planning, which is cut and dry. It's just, building law fundamentally, whilst I'm discovering things like, meditation and yoga and, reading about things like dimethyltryptamine, and then I'm going to go back and look at statutory planning law, and I'm just like, oh, this is tough.
But I guess if you're doing something that is law-based, it's nice to have that other lens because you do have a beautiful balance.
That's the way I wish I saw it. But I didn't. I wasn't the best student, if I'm honest, until probably my last few years. What I noticed was the town planning course at the start was really amazing. It was about the origins of town planning, the origins of how civilizations are created, what they're based on, their premises, cultural influences, how to structure a society, what are the important elements, etc., building, social, health, healthcare, recreational. And so it was really interesting seeing all the different styles of thinking, the schools of thought of how cities are created around the world, and that really opened my mind to things. But then as you start going from year 1 to 5, I did 5 years, you notice that these massive ideas, these grand ideas that people have, creative young minds, you notice that over the years it starts to become minimized as you have to go into a job. So you're talking about these, amazing utopian ideas that could potentially change the world if they were implemented well. These are people in their young 20s come up with all crazy ideas about how to create new civilizations, how to plan new towns. But then as it has to fit into the existing framework of what already exists, you start to see the creativity start to squash.
Yeah.
Whereas my creativity at the time was getting bigger because, again, I had my mind like severed. And so I noticed that the 4th and 5th year, I was still doing all of these crazy utopian environmental town planning dreams and like mock-ups and trying to fit them in with the existing paradigm. And I was just known as the kind of crazy guy, the kind of hippie guy doing all these environmental plans while people are doing cutthroat, very dry
Stock
but
standard.
practical plans that were really good, but just fitting in with the framework. And people are like, oh, look at this utopian guy again. Here he goes. Here's his presentation, unrealistic, etc., etc. And then I ended up doing a year of like an apprenticeship at a council. I'm not going to name it just because they had a bit of a cleansing of the people that were there because of bribery and corruption, etc., etc. So there was a few spots available at that council. I actually struggled to find somewhere to actually work because at the time I was just being very honest with everything.
No one
And
likes
they didn't
that.
really want honesty.
No.
They wanted just, you go into an interview and say, why do you want to become a town planner? Well, I actually just, want to actually shift the paradigm and turn building law more environmentally friendly, something that actually serves the people, something that actually, serves the environment, something that isn't relying upon industry, where there's, all that kind of stuff. And they're just like, and then they hear people who are basically reading their KPIs and reading the council's existing mission statement and just saying that, and they're like, yeah, this guy will fit right in. So then when I went to this place, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do that and kind of lie about why I want to be here, because anyway. So I got the gig, and I realised it was just extremely dry and a little bit soul sucking.
Yeah.
And the
9-to-5s tend to do that, don't they?
Yeah, really. I mean, I was doing, looking at permits and people's plans, and I had to go through them and analyse them. And at a certain point, I think it was in my 4th year, where discretionary powers were taken away from town planners, where a town planner could look at a permit or a permit application and say, okay, according to my training, I don't believe that this permit fits in with the vision of the town. I don't believe it protects the environment. I don't believe it's good for the flow of the city. It doesn't add character, etc., etc. That got taken away, and so a new plan came in, which was Melbourne 2030, and you basically had to understand Melbourne 2030 and then just box tick according to the plan. So you had no more say. It was just like, does it fit in with the plan? And I was like, this is really not what I thought. I was a little bit ignorant at the time. I had quite utopian-esque visions, and I was like, this isn't what I thought it was. And whilst I was at uni, a lot of my projects were environmental and self-sufficient style communities, but putting them within existing law. So I actually made it work. And so I studied and put in a lot of concepts from the Earthship Academy, the Earthship style houses, and how that works, and a lot of their principles. Well, I was trying to implement self-sufficient homes that served people, and how to also increase housing affordability, whilst still fitting in with current building law. Couldn't do all of the principles, but I really enjoyed it. It was probably the most self-sufficient house that I could find.
Yeah.
And I was always so inspired to build one. I still am.
Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about what an Earthship is?
Yeah. So I'll backtrack into it. But I wanted to see and build them for myself. So I left the gig and I went to New Mexico, Taos, and I joined up to the academy to learn how to build them. And basically...
Is that where they are? They're in Taos?
Taos, New Mexico, which is in America.
So did you sign up when you were in Melbourne, and then you went straight away?
So I flew over with a friend of mine who was also interested in it, and we went over, and it's pretty amazing. Taos is 8,500 feet above sea level.
Amazing.
Extremely high. It's just like desert, mesa, well, they call it the mesa, but it's desert with kind of sage shrubs everywhere. As far as the eye can see, visions, very, very quiet and vast. And went to the Earthship Academy and had my mind cracked open once again. When you're in a framework of living or a reality, we're in Melbourne. If you've only ever been in Melbourne, you can't imagine that there are any other ways of living. It's almost not possible.
That's why travel is such medicine for fresh minds. Like if, all my future children or people that say, I don't know what to do after school, go travel for a year. Find the world first before you decide what you want to do. I think that's such a gift when you start getting new lenses and speaking to people that you would never speak to when you're in your little bubble in Melbourne or wherever you're from, I guess.
Totally. And it's actually almost a remedy for racism. I know that's probably...
It's very true.
Sounds like an extreme statement.
No, not at all.
But what ends up happening is, I will backtrack, I will go back to New Mexico, but even going to Southeast Asia, which is completely different to the way we live in the West. It's the East, fundamentally. And, we get caught in these paradigms, in these frameworks about what reality is. You go there and you see people living in a completely different way, and you're like, wait, it's possible to live in another way? And, sorry, excuse me, a lot of the time you're feeling sympathy for their standard of living.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're happier than you.
Way
And
happier.
they're smiling more than you, and they're
Yeah.
more generous.
Yeah.
They've just met you, they don't know you, and they're feeding you and welcoming you in, and you're like, it starts to change the way you think about
Time.
the world.
They're offering, like, you meet strangers, they offer you to your house for dinner. Can you imagine going down the street and be like, hey, mate, you want to come over for dinner? Everyone like, no.
Yeah, they're thinking
Can you
trying to kidnap them.
Yeah, like, who's this serial killer?
Yeah.
It's so foreign for us. So when we see it there, but it's depending on how open-minded you are as a traveller. Most people are like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like, you watch vlogs on YouTube where people are like getting invited to their homes and people are going, and it's you know, I think your walls get put down because you're just in their world, so you're so open. So it's really beautiful to see when, that humans are so adaptable to everything.
For sure.
Different cultures and ways of living.
Yeah, and it's not that the Western civilization is bad per se, it's just that all different types of cultures have their good and bad.
Of course.
And so when you go see other cultures, when you look at the positives, you want to bring them back.
You want to, yeah.
And then if you can't bring them back because the paradigm is too strong here, then you get those post-travel blues.
Big time. Well, everyone says that, like, oh, when I go to overseas or come back, I'm like, I need to book another holiday, so I've got something to look forward to. And it's just like being mundane and unhappy for the next few months before you get to be happy again and living your holidays. And it's really sad, and that's why we want to do these things to make us really happy. But yes, I think making your reality and your everyday as perfect as possible for you is definitely key, rather than waiting for the big holidays.
Take the good, release the bad.
Release the bad.
Make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Lee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, even when you were talking about Memento Mori, Marcus Aurelius, I feel that comes with holidays as well. The same feeling when you get back, you're filled with happiness, and you look at reality differently. You start judging your life and start making bigger decisions, or what can I do to feel like that, like I did when I was there.
Yeah.
So it's that urge to change, but then 1 week back at work and you forgot you're on holidays.
It's really interesting when you're traveling. You experience things like synchronicities. You experience, something you've been wanting to know for so long, and you meet the person who wrote the book. Like, you have all these crazy experiences.
The answers are just revealed on a platter for you.
Yeah, and I wondered why. And I noticed that people that I have friends who have moved here from overseas, and they experienced that in Melbourne.
Wow.
How's it possible to experience in Melbourne? I didn't think that was a possibility. I thought this was the place that was filled.
The soul-sucking
This was stagnancy.
Yeah.
And so what it is, it's actually I think it's more of a mind frame where you're completely open to adventure. You're resilient. You're not locked into too many commitments that are mundane or too heavy on the clock, or a very solid and almost unchangeable routine.
You don't have to go too far to experience that. You could go camping. You can go rural Victoria.
For sure.
You could go wherever to break your routine and break just even like if you're taking like a staycation, you've got, that awkward time between Christmas and New Year's where we've all got time off and no one's working and everyone's home. Like, that still feels great.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know, I guess it's just the pressures of society, working, getting up, doing this, cooking dinner. Like, there's just, whatever is a stress for you, and you're doing it every day, and it becomes so mundane where you become a little bit, this brain fog.
Yeah, definitely can happen. And so, going back to New Mexico, I had a few of those experiences.
Amazing.
So I'll just quickly run down what an earthship is. Basically invented by Michael Reynolds, who was an architect who lost his architectural license for not abiding with the code. And he said, because he was a high-level architect, and he said, well, why would I abide with the code if the building code isn't actually serving people? And so he ended up, because he couldn't get his architectural license back, but wanted to keep designing buildings based on nature's principles, he created his own title, which was biotecture rather than architecture. And he utilised, solar passive principles, working with the sun, thermal mass, so proper insulation using the earth, and also utilising resources that help clean the earth. And so he used tyres. And so, in Australia, I think we used to give 2 million tyres a year approximately to China to burn. And America used to give about 25 or something million tyres a year for China to burn. But I don't think someone might have to confirm this, but I don't think China's taking tyres anymore to burn. And so I think everyone's having to deal with their own shit now. And so tyres are a massive issue, but they're also really, really good. Tyres they're pretty amazing. Think about how much we drive.
Resilient.
You rarely have to change your tyres.
No.
Unless, you or me back in the day. But you really have to change. You really have to change them, and because once the tyres can't be driven with anymore, they're still amazing. So what you do is you fill them with rammed earth and a sledgehammer. It's some of the most labour-intensive work I've ever done, but some of the best work I've ever done too. It takes about 4 wheelbarrows of dirt per tyre.
Really?
You're packing,
4?
You're packing
Wow.
in, lifting up the flaps of the tyres and punching in earth there, and it becomes this huge brick encased in rubber and steel. And so Mike Reynolds said, if he was an alien and he came to Earth and he had to pick a building material, he would pick tyres, because you still stack them like bricks. What happens is, because they're sitting on top of each other, there's no mortar, but they're very heavy. And so what ends up happening, if there's an earthquake, the rubber just moves. So they're pretty much earthquake proof.
Wow.
They're all fireproof as well. And yeah, you get paid about $1 to $2 per tyre to take them away from a yard. So you get paid for the materials too. It's pretty amazing.
So this is the foundation for the homes.
This is what's actually the whole wall. It's the whole back wall, which actually it's its own foundation as well. And so you're almost building this little cave, but they've made them really modern as well. They've made them quite gorgeous. So I went over, learned to build them, and there was a moment that I had that mind expansion or another cracking, because I needed another one at the time. But I remember we got snowed off one of the days where we couldn't go to class because, being so high above sea level, sometimes it'd be 40 degrees during the day, working, sweating, and then at night time it would just snow.
Whoa.
It was so insane. So these houses had to be legit. They had to be well fortified, and keeping temperature in the buildings without heating or air conditioning in those extreme conditions. So this was a real test and a testament to how good these houses were. And there was a moment where, we got snowed off, and so I went to the local Whole Foods place during the day and got not on this day, but during some of the days I'd go and get food and cereal and fruit and veg, etc., etc. And so every morning I'd have a little granola bowl. And the front of the home the front of all the Earthship homes are greenhouses, which
Beautiful.
And they're facing south, whereas here in the south we would be facing north for the northern hemisphere to utilise the sun in the best way possible. And so the front of the home is actually, it must be a greenhouse, because it actually brings in temperature and then stores in the back wall, in the berm. Anyway, people can do the research themselves. I'm not going to go into the technicalities, but so the front of the home grows food as well. And so if you need to trap heat in a greenhouse, you may as well grow some food too.
Perfect.
And the water gets used from your tap 4 times before it disappears, whereas we turn on the tap,
It disappears.
it's gone. This gets used 4 times, goes through plants. The plants filter the water from the bathroom, goes out, feeds the plants outside, and grows your food. It's a beautiful system.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I remember, it was snowing, and I went to go and get some bananas from the tree, and I'm just in shorts. And I remember holding my bowl, grabbing a banana, and just breaking it off, and looking outside, and it's just snowing. And I'm in shorts, and I'm in 30 degrees, and I was just looking outside. I've got a banana that's growing here. I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? And then when I come back to Melbourne, it's a little bit cold outside. 1 hour later, it's a little bit cold inside.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, it just doesn't quite suffice. So that really just, another thing that opened my mind to some new possibilities.
So the Earthship homes, there's no bills, hey?
Well, if you build them, there's a few ways you can build them. If you were to build them in Melbourne, there's certain restrictions that you just can't do. Like self-contained sewerage is very hard to get approvals for. They don't want us to deal with our own shit.
Literally.
Literally, that's not even a metaphor. And could be, but it's not. And yeah, so, but in Taos, New Mexico, fully self-sufficient. So no bills.
Beautiful.
It's pretty amazing.
And you would have met so many like-minded people that up there as well, building them. You would have made some pretty cool friends.
Certainly, friends for life. Yeah, it was a really great journey. And then coming back to Melbourne, and I was, what am I doing with myself here?
So this was, from the hospital issue journey, this is 5 years after you finished, you went to New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me just, I think it was 4 years after, because I got credits for my first year from
That's right.
From doing the landscape and architecture. So it was about, I think it was 4 to 4.5 years later. And then coming back to Melbourne, I was basically wondering, what do I do? Do I go back into town planning? I'm qualified, I've got some skills. But then I really reflected on, am I able to make, any change doing town planning? And you definitely can, but it takes a long, long time to move up in council, to become trusted, to have enough leverage to make decisions. But then, the kind of powers and discretionary powers disappeared almost incrementally over time. And so I didn't think I could make much of a difference. And I guess, to go back, I wanted to make some kind of difference. That's an important fact. And so, especially being inspired at the Earthship Academy, so many amazing people with some amazing ideas to help the condition of the earth, whether it's psychologically, environmentally. And, I really fell in love with the bush, with nature throughout those years. And so, I wanted to work with that.
Well, how could you go back? You couldn't go back even if you tried, I guess.
You can't unsee it.
No.
You can't unsee it. And then, that obviously led to my business endeavours later on.
Amazing. You've had quite a journey. I've wanted to circle back when you was talking a little bit about birthdays and Christmas.
Yes.
I want to dive into that a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Tell me why you feel that you don't want to celebrate your birthday.
Well, I feel like my birthday had passed when I was born. That was the birthday.
It was the birthday.
We all celebrated.
We did.
It's time we move on. No. I wanted to think about it again, and just a bit of discretion. And a bit of a precursor here. I enjoy other people's birthdays. I respect that other people want to celebrate their birthdays, and I'm always there with bells on.
You are. You get full into it.
I get into it more than anyone else.
You do. This is why it's really interesting to see, because you're just so cut off from yours, but from everyone else, you're there.
Yeah.
You're the life of the party there.
Life of the party, right? and it's not about me not believing in birthdays itself. It's just that it doesn't suit me.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And I feel that way about what I eat. Like, being plant-based. I have people around me being like, do you mind if I eat this steak around you? I was like, I don't care. And they're like, I only eat meat once or twice a week. I'm like, can I please just eat my meal?
It's very interesting.
I really do not care. It seems like you care more than me.
I see that so often when it comes to your decisions based on the way you want to make changes to your life. I feel that it comes from a place where people feel they need to make the change as well, but you're their mirror. So I do see that a lot when it comes to so many different things. When it comes to making big changes in your life. Yeah. Veganism was a big one when I did it too. I saw that a lot. They're like, I would love to do it. Everyone said that. I would love to be vegan.
Yeah.
Just can't.
The main issue with that, I think, why people feel a sense of insecurity is that, you know, every type of movement or cult, and I say cult because, you know, it's the prefix of the word culture, is a cult of some sort. Cult doesn't have to be so extreme, but there are extreme versions on the spectrum of every movement, and so people are generally exposed to extreme versions of veganism, and then anything. People are exposed to an extreme version of anything, and then anyone who is on that spectrum at all is instantly put into the extreme. It's probably one of the biggest issues of our society, which is, you know, why we're so divided. Is because if you believe something or you practice something, you're instantly on the extreme. And so if someone doesn't practice, they're on the other extreme. And so there's no meeting in the middle because they're on the other sides of the spectrum.
It's creating a big divide.
Yeah, it's insane. That's why these conversations are good. And so, you know, bridging that gap. And so, where was I? Birthdays.
So you love going to other people's birthdays, but you feel that your birthday had passed, so you don't want to keep celebrating it every year.
Yeah, and so I created more of a meritocracy situation for me, or a system, where I felt that, because I want to go back just a little bit, I really tried to understand how my brain worked and how I worked. And so I wanted to work with, you know, the natural impulsions and inclinations that I already had. Like, my brain is like wildfire. And so I realized that I had to be super disciplined, super strict with myself, because then I become highly organized. And some people are like, oh, you know, you're being too strict here, you're not really enjoying yourself. I was like, trust me, I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a great time. And I need to be highly organized, and I need to be efficient, and I need to be scheduled. Otherwise, my brain will start causing havoc. And so I started to really work with that and understand that, which you know, you got to go through a lot of pain and a lot of trauma to get there. And so I realized that I didn't want to celebrate my birthday if I hadn't earned it. You know, and again, this has got nothing to do with anyone else's birthday. I know people are thinking, oh, you know, I celebrate my birthday because right now I don't care about anyone else's birthday. This is just my story right now. If I've been a you know, a lousy person that whole year, and then everyone just comes and buys me gifts and presents and validates that year for me, I don't feel like my brain works well that way. And so I started only celebrating after I would achieve certain things and goals.
Like levels.
I created a little bit of a level system for me. And so when I achieve my level 4, I'll have a great party. It's going to be fantastic. I don't know when it's going to be, because again, it's goal orientated.
So is this like a level of spiritual growth?
So I created like a bit of a life plan for me, and things that I want to achieve in step by step in order, and they fell into 7 phases. And so when I complete that phase, I'll celebrate.
Okay.
It might not be. I may never get there. I hope I get there. This year to the next level. But yeah, I was made a level 3 cake for my last one.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm against celebrations. It's just that birthdays don't work for me.
Yes. And concentrating and concentrating on age, especially as you get older, it can do quite psychological damage when you're like, oh, turning 60, I'm turning 70, I'm like, fuck, how close am I to death? And you start pondering death more and start becoming quite stressed and scared over it. Yeah. I saw that with so many people. I saw that with our grandmother, with our mother. And when you get into big milestones, it's like, oh, like, why am I feeling like this? I remember when 30 I was completely fine about. 27 was my year that I felt I really struggled with. It was like, I am a couple of years off 30. I feel like I'm not where I wanted to be. And I had a mini breakdown, sort of, where I really honed in on the way my life looked.
Was it like a early midlife crisis?
I think so. I was over the hump of mid-20s, and I really honed in on it. And me and Mark, my husband now, we were only together for like a year at this stage, and like, let's go away, let's go to Japan, and I don't want to be here for my birthday. And we just kind of travelled and spent my birthday away from everybody. And it was really interesting when, you know, I saw age really have an impact on the way I viewed my life.
Yep.
It kind of turned out as a positive for me because I got to really look at it with on a deeper level. But I think it's kind of more damaging as you do get older and you feel like you're getting to the other side of your life.
Yeah, the midlife crisis thing is so interesting. I don't think it necessarily has to happen at the middle of your life. I guess it just does because people realise that they're halfway through their life and they're not where they want it to be, and they realise that according to, you know, what they've been told and what they've heard and obviously pattern recognition, etc., that they're going to start decaying from this point. And so it's such a great opportunity. It's a memento mori once again. It's such a great opportunity for growth. The earlier you can have it and the more that you can have it, the better. And so, you know, it's like, oh, I haven't done this in my life. I haven't been the greatest person. I didn't achieve this. I haven't done this. What do I do? You know, you start building up fear, and then you're like, I'll buy a Harley Davidson and get blonde tips, and it was a wasted opportunity. Not that that's bad, but you know, it's such a good time to do that, and the more that can happen, if you can have a little crisis all the time, and that reminder of death all the time, it's very, very powerful. There's a plaque on the front of a monastery on the top of Mount Athos in Greece. It's one of the oldest monasteries in Greece. It says, I'm going to butcher this, but it's I'm not going to say it. I think I know how to say it in Greek, but I'm not going to do it.
Can I give it a go?
No. Do you reckon anyone who understands Greek will be watching this?
Most definitely.
Well, then no, I won't do it. But basically, it's if you die before you die, then you won't die when you die.
Say it again.
If you die before you die, then you won't die when you die.
When you die.
And so that's the, you know, having those near-death experiences, or having that Marcus Aurelius reflection moments where you've experienced these deaths before without actually physically dying. You've experienced these mental deaths
and these
rebirths. Exactly. And so when you die, there almost is no death because you've been having those all the time.
It's the same as going from maiden to mother. When you're going through that shift of birthing, they say this all the time. Active labour feels like you're dying, and it's not that you are dying. A part of you is dying that will no longer ever be you ever again. Once that baby is here, you will never be not a mother ever again. So it's so interesting to see big moments like that, big spiritual shifts, or big, when you're honing in on who you really want to be, those moments are, because you can't go down further than rock bottom. There's always that growth. So when you're really feeling like you're there, there's only one way up. And it's a really beautiful place to be. It's uncomfortable as all hell. That's why everyone hates it, I guess. But it's such an important thing to experience those really hard falls.
Yeah, the winds are strongest when you're at the top of the mountain.
Most definitely.
Quick question. All I've ever heard about labour is how bad it is, how painful it is, and even though I'm a man, I am still scared of it, like it's about to happen to me. You know what I mean? It's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Why would someone do it for the second time?
Because you forget what it's like.
Is it like a trauma recovery response?
I think it's just I think it's just a normal thing that women go through. Everyone says this, I forgot what it feels like. Because the feeling that you get when you're holding your baby, it pretty much, you forget about everything. The pain, it doesn't even come to your fruition anymore. Like, you remember how fucked it was, but you don't remember the detail of it until you start, like, I haven't had another child after my first, but you do. People say they're like, oh, first contractions, here we go again, oh no, and then you get reminded straight away. But that feeling of, the love that you feel for holding your baby, it just, it wipes away all those memories.
To everyone who's done it for the first, second time, and the crazy people who do it for the fifth time, like, good on yous.
6th time, 7th time.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. I personally, at this point, my schedule is so filled, and it's highly organised, and I don't see where a baby could fit in it. I really don't.
Men are different. Women are very into, where the mother instinct is exactly that. It's we are prepared for the time where our lives don't matter as much anymore. It matters, but it's on the back burner until you have time, I guess. It's such an interesting part. Like, it is that death that you feel. And you go through a mourning phase when you're having your first or being pregnant, because you're going through that. My life is never, ever going to be the same. So it is a very beautiful, it's a very scary moment.
Would you call it the ultimate, or maybe not the ultimate, but would you call it a massive act in selflessness?
1000%. It's the most selfless thing you could ever do, being a mother. Yeah.
Terrifying.
It is.
Terrifying. I guess, like, the natural hormones and genetic response that I have being a man, I guess there's a natural repulsion to that idea. Whereas, I've been around ladies who have, grown up over time, and when they're a bit younger, there's that repulsion there too, but then there's something that happens where it becomes more of a acceptable idea. It's like, no way, I'll never do that. And you get to a certain age, and then the natural kind of human brain chemicals start to change, and then it becomes more of an acceptable idea.
Most definitely. I was having this conversation recently, actually, about, I've always been quite a person that, like, loved being independent and loved being me and doing things for myself.
Yeah.
However, when I did hit 30, that year in particular, I thought about being a mother so much more than the year before or ever.
Wow.
It was like I would live my life, and like I would say something or hear something, and then my subconscious would be like, I need to remember that, because you should teach your child that. Like, that was the way my brain would start working. Or it would just think about a child. What would I do with that child? How it would fit into my life? What I want to teach it? How it would grow up? What sort of mother I wanted to be? And those thoughts were literally every single day. Every day. And I remember having this conversation with Mark. I'm like, this is really weird, but it's so beyond me. Like, I have no control over this whatsoever. It was just this force I really felt within. And I guess looking back now, it's my biological clock was going, come on, there's a ticking, or, my body's all, the universe or God or was like saying that this is, you're ready. Your time is coming. Like, this is, start getting ready, because it's going to happen soon.
My biological clock is broken, it seems. I'm Uncle Floyd for life, not Papa Floyd. Just the cool uncle.
The cool uncle.
Baby starts crying.
Bye.
Need to change the nappies, back to you. But then when it's playtime, it's all me.
Well, interesting story. You were actually there when I went into labour. So you heard a lot of the active labour.
I did. Maybe that's what broke my biological clock. I was like, I'm glad I was there.
How did you feel about the situation?
It was intense. It was very, very intense. Because I wasn't supposed to be there.
No.
Oh, that's what the midwife said. When she rocked up, she said, what are you doing here? I was like, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, it was interesting because you came over.
Because I was working on your street for 2 days. And I thought, rather than driving back an hour and 20 minutes home, I'm on your street.
Yeah,
Can I stay over that night?
Of course.
On the Wolf Moon.
So that was, I was about to say that. There was a few weird synchronicities that happened that night. So you came over and it was a wolf full moon, which meant it was obviously summer here in Australia in January. However, in the States it was called the wolf full moon because it was winter, the moon was full, and there was the time that the wolves were hunting and howled at the moon. And it was the beginning of a new season, I think it was. So that was that full moon. You have a big wolf piece tattoo on your chest.
I do.
And...
But for the people that I'm going to have to go and do negotiations with in business in the future, I do not. I'm tattoo free.
Tattoo free, clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
But you were always resonated with the wolf, like as a spirit animal, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, it was always something that you were really drawn towards.
For sure.
So
you were favourite animal.
You are the white wolf.
Yeah.
Even before you had that tattoo.
Yeah.
And there was a commercial that came up while you were there or before you came over, where it was a perfume commercial with Johnny Depp, and he was advertising his perfume, and he was walking under a full moon followed by all these white wolves.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
So those three things happened separately, and I remember going outside when I started feeling the contractions. I'm like, I'm just going to go outside. And I sat under the full moon, and I just stared at the moon, and our grandmother had recently passed away, and I remember feeling like a sense of peace, going, I know that everything is always going to be okay.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm glad I was there.
Yep.
I wasn't glad that I was there at the time. But, yeah, I ended up sleeping.
You fell asleep.
I fell asleep.
Yep. I would say that bit about you wanted to put something on the TV.
Yeah, so I woke up at about 1 a.m. Was it about that or 12?
Oh, I have no idea.
I'd fallen asleep, and then I woke up to some screaming. I'm like, what's going on? And Mark comes out, he's like, hey man, it's happening. I was like, what's happening? He's like, Steph's going into labour. And I was like, what? And then I was just like, what do I do? I've never been in this situation before. And then I go into the room and see you, and you were, you're like, can you go and get this? Can you get me towels? Can you do this? And Mark's like, can you fill up the
birth pool?
The birth pool. And I'm just like, freaking out. And then the midwife comes, and then she's like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm sorry, I was just sleeping. I'm working down the road. She's like, you cannot be here. I was like, all right. Did she listen to this?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I would.
She was amazing, but I wasn't supposed to be there, which is fair enough. And I was like, okay, if you need me, I'll be right here. I'm going to be on the couch. It's like 2 a.m. at this point. I'm not going home. And so I went onto your couch and chucked on Marvel's Daredevil series, and I was just like shaking, just like listening to the howls of the wolf moon, and then I ended up falling asleep.
You did.
And then falling asleep, and then I wake up and Emily's there.
Yeah.
And she's taking towels out and doing this, and she's like, oh, Steph went into hospital. She's like, did you fall asleep? I was like, yeah. I guess I did. I'm a heavy sleeper.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting.
It was an honour to be there.
It was.
I'll tell Atlas the story.
Yes. And interesting to see what your perception is of me prior to being a mum to me being now. Do you see a difference in me?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like it just wipes out a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
It almost has to, because you have to realise what's really important, because you have to reprioritise the whole life. So all of the shit that doesn't serve you has to go. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, seeing that kind of protection, that mother energy as well, where putting the child first over absolutely everything, it's like a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Definitely. Wanted to backtrack. Actually, this is your interview.
You go backtrack. Go for it.
Backtracking to celebrations. Didn't want to veer off too far from the tangent.
Yes.
Was there anything else you wanted to say on the topic?
Christmas.
Is there anything else you wanted to say before we move back to that?
About the birthdays?
About birth and motherhood, anything like that?
No.
Closing that chapter? Fantastic.
Yeah, well, this is not an interview. This is just a chat.
That's very true.
We just chatted.
Very true. So...
Feel free to ask questions or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yes. Actually, I do want to circle back to the birthday one a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So birthdays were really hard, especially for Mum, I feel, because,
They were hard.
It was a beautiful, I look at it now from my perspective. Birth wasn't only a time for you, but it was huge time for the mother as well. Mm-hmm. It's the day that she went through a form of death, as we were saying before.
Sure.
And it's a time where she will always have very high up on her best things that ever happened in her life. So the fact that she cannot celebrate it with the other person that was involved in that would have been very, very hard.
Yeah,
and I see that
agree.
now from being a mum.
I agree. I didn't really think about that at the time, but once I did, I realised that I'm going to be buying her gifts from now on that day.
Oh, and you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and I think
lovely.
that's a really great idea.
Oh, that's really cute. I didn't know you did that.
She went through things. Not me, I just came out. I had no choice in the matter where she went through the pain, so I think she deserves a present.
I think that's beautiful. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, and the presents will be getting more extravagant every year.
As you have more appreciation.
As I have more appreciation,
Yeah.
for sure. So, when Christmas was brought to my attention, actually it took, just circling back to birthdays again, it took Mum about 5 years to finally accept that I didn't want to celebrate my birthday anymore. She's like, "Are you sure you're not going to get upset if I don't message you?" I was like,
You don't want to.
I really do not want you to message me.
So funny. She's like, "How about I message you like the day after or what?" She goes, "I'll send you like a organic fruit box to your house."
Yeah, I was like, okay,
a
as long
week
as it's
before.
after. As long as it's on the 17th. Yeah.
Oh, she's so cute.
Yeah, she is. She's great. And so yeah, when Christmas was brought to my attention, when the family's like, "Are you coming to Christmas?" And I had that, wait a minute, what's Christmas? Didn't even really know what Christmas was. I knew that there was like Santa Claus involved, that there was Jesus involved, there were reindeers involved, there were presents, Christmas trees, and snowmen.
Well,
and
I guess
what is this story?
Christianity won the race with the religion race when it came to Western world.
I guess so, but where does Santa Claus fit in? If Santa Claus isn't in the Bible, and so it was very strange, a very strange concept to me. So I went back and just researched what Christmas is. Is that Atlas?
It is Atlas.
Good morning, mate.
We're gonna have to pause it, but we'll come back.
We'll come back on Christmas.
We'll come back on
what
Christmas.
I started doing during Christmas.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I'm excited about this bit.
Done.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Honesty Policy Podcast, where we have open dialogues and get to the truth of the matter. Unrestricted, uncensored. And now for your host, Stephanie Marie.
That was pretty good.
Not bad.
Oh, I might hire you for your services.
Could even do like a Stephanie, like more of a...
Fight.
Yeah.
I love it.
Kids are gone.
The kids are gone.
It's party time.
Party time, yes.
You can use to have big people voices.
Yeah, I know. Woo!
Alright. Where were we?
Christmas.
Christmas. Favourite time of the year.
I was thinking a lot about, so when you started contemplating whether you wanted to celebrate birthdays, did Christmas fall into that as well?
It was as it arose,
Yeah.
I thought about it again.
Yes.
And so I realised I didn't want to celebrate Christmas until I knew exactly why I was celebrating it.
Okay.
Everything was pretty much very intentional at the time. And so I didn't want to just do things for the sake of it. And so there was a time where the family was asking, "Are you coming to Christmas?" I said, "I'll have to think about it." And obviously it caused a little bit of mishap for a few years.
Did.
As you know, I started not getting in family photos anymore because I realised I didn't like photos. So I don't want to be in a photo. I don't really like photos. Like a smile. I was like, why? I don't really feel like smiling right now. Nevertheless, anyway, that's just me. I'm a bit of a strange character, but yeah, I stopped attending family Christmases at some point, and it was a bit of a transition. It's hard for the family to accept for a few years. They thought I was being rude, and I knew that they thought that, but I still had to stay true to what I believed in.
Stuck to your guns?
Stuck to my guns. Then there was a time where I went to this is gonna fall back and go full circle, promise. When I went to the monastery in Serpentine, Perth, as I described in the first part of this podcast, the very first part last week, that I was studying different types of ancient wisdom, different types of philosophies, etc., and joined the Theosophical Library up in Caulfield. Andrew Rook, a fantastic man who runs the library there, took me in, and it's basically a paradise for that, for comparative philosophies and comparative religion studies. It's just a paradise of books there. It's a labyrinth. It's absolutely amazing. So I asked Andrew, having some difficulties with meditation. You research so many different things, so many different techniques, so many different styles, and when you sit there, you're like, fuck, which one do I do?
Yeah, which one's perfect for me?
Which one do I do?
The more you know in this sort of stuff, the more you start honing in on it, the more you start, there's so many options, and it becomes overwhelming, and then people stop altogether. This is what I feel happens with health, with training, with eating styles. There's a lot of information out there, and it can become completely conflicting, some of them.
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was happening with me, but I realised that there is no one path anywhere. There's many paths to the road, to the way. There's many roads, and so I wanted to find one that I could really delve into. And so Andrew recommended me a great teacher in the West, Ajahn Brahm, who studied in a monastery in Thailand. He was a theoretical physicist before he became a monk, and so highly intellectual dude, extremely intelligent, and is really good at bringing very far out ancient Buddhist concepts into even relating them to science, and also into very very well explained plain English. And so I read Ajahn Brahm's book, Mind, Meditation and Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically is like a step-by-step recipe according to the traditional, some of the oldest Buddhist texts from the Theravada tradition, if anyone wants to know. And so I read the book, and I was having breakthroughs of my meditation. I was going way deeper. I was meditating for way longer because I understood what the hindrances were. For example, if you've had a crazy day, let's say you wake up late, you didn't put an alarm on, you're an hour late to work, you drive, someone cuts you off, you end up hitting someone, and you've got to take their details, and then you're rushing to work, cops pull you over, your boss is mad with you, you have a fight there, you come back home, have a fight with your partner, and then you come...
Great day.
Yeah. It's extreme, but it can happen.
Of course.
And then you sit down, try and meditate, and then you focus on your breath. Good luck. Not happening. You're not focusing on anything, right? And so that focusing on the breath is like the fifth or sixth step. So there's all these things that you have to do beforehand before you even get there. But a lot of the time we're just told to sit down and focus on your breath. It's like, yeah, right. Good luck.
Not today, love.
Not today, Junior. And so, I basically was going through all of these prerequisite activities before you even get there, and then having breakthroughs. And so you realise what the hindrances are. Okay, the reason I couldn't go further here is because I didn't do this. But it's not just theory. You practice it and you feel...
Course.
And you actually go and pass these certain points you never could before.
What were some of the other things that were done prior to breath work?
Well, the first thing is just setting up the mind and realising that if you're sitting down in meditation at this point, that nothing else is important right now. You have to tell yourself that, like, I'm meditating now, so there's nothing else in the whole world that's important. Nothing. This is the most important thing I could be doing right now. It's the most productive thing I could be doing right now. I'm taking the time to sit down, and so this is it. This is the most important thing I could do in the whole entire world right now. Everything else doesn't matter. The other thing is to realise that now you are just a meditator. You've got no titles, you've got no job, no one expects anything from you right now. No one's asking you to do anything. No one wants you to do anything right now, and you can actually just switch off. You're no longer a doctor, a lawyer, you're nothing right now. You're just a meditator, equal to every other meditator in the entire world or universe, whatever. And so you drop all of the titles, and now it's just like, you get into that state of like, because you're just thinking, I should meditate for 20 minutes, but I know that I've got to do this later. I know that I probably could be doing that. Maybe that's more productive. It's like you drop all that, you realise, for the first time today, no one wants anything from me.
Lovely.
That's just like, thank gosh. All I have to do now is just sit. And then doing things like a body scan where you're relaxing every single muscle. That also helps you focus on one thing at a time, gets your mind away from thinking about a million things. When you start thinking about one thing at a time, single-pointed focus, single-pointedness, single-pointed mindfulness is like the main goal of meditation, is to focus on one single thing, and that's usually the breath, the most simple thing that we have. And then you're basically dropping the baggage, letting go first. There's the simile that Ajahn Brahm used in the book is like, sitting down after a mad day and trying to focus on your breath would be like a carpenter, or someone at the mill, the timber yard, cutting a tree in half, cutting out a piece of wood, and then going to oil it before treating it, before sanding it. Wow. So you will certainly get splinters.
It's a very scary time because you're trying so hard to concentrate on your breath, but there's all these other limitations around you floating around of, you've got to be a mum, got to go to this, got to do that, I've got to cook dinner, and then there's what happened yesterday, why did I say that in conversation yesterday, or all these things that are floating around that mad monkey brain that's going on, and you're just like, why the fuck can't I meditate?
Yeah.
And it's I think this is what stops a lot of people from doing it.
Yeah.
Because it is so hard,
it's hard.
when you're just saying all you need to do is concentrate on your breath.
Yeah, exactly. And then you hear so many times, you hear it so often where people are like, oh, I can't meditate, my mind is just too active.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's why you should meditate.
Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
But generally it's because of, either, I would say a lack of proper instruction, or an inferior teaching style, or perhaps a mistranslation of some sort. But this is why I was having breakthroughs, and I fell in love.
The way.
Yeah, I fell in love, or a way.
A way.
Yeah, many roads.
Many roads.
This is just a good road.
Yeah,
and
it suited you.
It suited me. And so I really fell in love with Ajahn Brahm's teachings. When I first saw him, he didn't look like what I imagined a meditation master to look like. He's English.
Hey, I was going to say the white guy. You thought he was Indian.
But then I was told by someone, if you're a Westerner in like a Thai monastery, for example, in order to become an abbot of a monastery, or the head of a monastery, or someone who's highly revered, you have to be so much better than someone from that culture. Think about it. You're a Westerner, and you're now revered in the community, which means you actually have to try harder, because you're almost like an outsider in a sense. And when I was told, I was like, okay, wow, so he's pretty legit, and he's
amazing.
So then I decided to go over to Serpentine, Perth, where he opened up a monastery. And I went over there, stayed there for about a month and a bit, and yeah, it was a thing. It was a thing. I'd love to tell you that the whole time I had beautiful transcendental meditations, but most of the time it was tough.
So when you got there, did you have to wear gowns? Did you have to work? Did you have to did you have to cook? What did a day look like there?
So I was basically living like a junior, or an anagarika, which is someone who's in trial for monkhood. So rather than just going into monkhood and realising it's not for you, you do a semi-monkhood.
Like apprenticeship?
Pretty much, yeah. Anagarika, yeah. It's like an apprenticeship monk. It's an apprentice monk, where you're wearing white rather than the orange or ochre gowns, and you are basically doing all of the same stuff, except you haven't fully committed. So, for example, in this tradition, a monk can never grab anything for himself, including food or drinks, or can't handle money or drive cars. It all has to be offered. So if no one's there to offer anything for monks, they'll all starve. So that's why the community is so important around a monastery. And so the idea is that the monks are dedicated themselves to achieving enlightenment, or whatever anyone wants to call it, brings the teachings to the community. So the community comes and learns, so that, because they've decided not to dedicate their life to it, they've decided to work. So while they're doing the enlightenment investigation, giving the teachings to the people feed them in return. So it's like a sangha, which Beautiful. Is a community.
So based on that, the town Serpentine would be pretty Incredible. Will they be very open to the teachings?
Yeah.
Most of them are?
Well, not the whole town.
Is it a pretty big town?
It's a big place. It's got some beautiful pristine forests and stuff. So it's vast. But a lot of people come from all over Perth to the monastery.
Okay, so not everyone's involved in the monastery.
No. You've got Thai community, Sri Lankan community, Indian communities, and then the locals of Perth too. And so I was actually worried about what I was going to eat there. I was like, I wonder if there's going to be anything plant-based. Man, it was
It was just plant-based?
It was no, not just, but it was an absolute feast every day. You'd have 40 to 60 people coming every day, and every family's bringing 3 or 4 huge dishes, and it was just this absolute buffet. And I was like, oh, so it was a challenge to not eat so much.
Can imagine.
Yeah, and I was like, this is not what I was expecting.
Wow.
I thought I was going to go starving, but yeah, I had to try my best not to be a glutton. And so the routine would be waking up in the morning, early, doing a meditation.
What's early?
Between 5 and 6 o'clock.
Whenever you wanted to, or was there bells?
Well, you had to go to. I had to serve tea to the monks in the morning too, because I was that's what an anagarika does. Because monks can't serve themselves tea, so I would be available to do that for them, and do a blessing, etc., etc. So I would go and serve tea at about 7, and then I would do a walking meditation after that as well, which is sometimes it's if you want to integrate yourself during the day. In the morning, after you wake up, the thoughts start to become active as the serotonin increases, and or your dopamine starts getting released with the sun. You start having more lively thoughts, and so walking meditation is a good way to introduce that.
Japanese call it forest bathing.
Forest bathing, yeah. So you can either do it on a track in the forest, but they also had these little walking tracks where you walk up and down.
Ah, what, within the monastery?
Yeah, there were it's a strong part of this particular lineage's practices. Yeah, and then after that I would do yard sweeping, and so every single thing had to be completely mindful. So when I'm sweeping, left, right, left.
It's like a wax on, wax off moment.
The whole thing's wax on, wax off. The whole experience is wax on, wax off. And so the idea is just everything you're doing, you're being mindful and you're not thinking about anything else. And then after that, serving lunch and making lunch. Then, just before that, you're doing work. You're going out to do work, 2 to 3 hours of yard work or building work or maintenance work. And while you're doing that, it's just mindfulness, focusing on the one activity, you're not multitasking at all. You're just focusing on what you're doing, one thing at a time, and it's really hard at first.
What was the phone switch like?
Oh, no phones.
No phones.
No, I mean I could access my phone, some evenings, or some weekends. I kind of had to because I was still running a business at the time, but yeah, no phones, fundamentally, so no distractions. So the first week I got there, I was like, oh, peace and quiet, middle of bush. I had my kuti, my little hut, with just a bed, a desk, a chair.
Amazing.
Beautiful. Second week, I was like, I need some fucking stimulation. I was like, I'm going crazy. I was like, I need, trying to distract myself here and there, because, when you stop eating and you're fasting, your body starts detoxing. When you stop stimulation coming into the mind, so food for the mind, it starts to detox too. And so the mind starts stripping away and getting to the core of what you're really thinking, and it gets very uncomfortable after a while. It's what isolation eventually does. And so, and then after lunch, you serve lunch, you do a big clean with the community, then you go back and you have some spare time, and then every second day is a talk done by one of the monks or Ajahn Brahm himself, and the rest of the time is just study, etc. And it's that every single day. And so after I peeled off quite a few layers, went through a lot of discomfort, trying to get into the Buddhist culture too, reading the texts and trying to really delve in while I was there. And sometimes I couldn't meditate anymore because it was just, I didn't want to deal with some of the stuff that my mum was bringing up, because there's no escape from it. You can't escape. And so I tried to read the Buddhist scriptures, and then they would be profound and they'd bring more things out. And it's just like,
Wow.
There's no escape here.
Was it the same story that kept coming up that needed to be, I guess, healed? The trauma that kept coming up that you felt, was it the same story all the time, or was it just different things kept popping up?
It was actually pretty much the same. I wouldn't say it was a specific trauma. I would say it was more confronting me with what did I really want to do in my life.
Wow.
What do you really want to do? And are you actually doing that? And are you doing it mindfully? Do you have a plan? And I realised I didn't really have a plan. I was basically rolling with the punches a little bit. And so on the third week, I sat down. I was like, okay, what do I really, really want to do with my life? What do I really want to do? Do I want to, continue in doing like the building and the building maintenance? Do I want to go back into town planning? Do I want to start my own business of passion? Do I want to get a regular job? Do I want to go live in an off-grid community? Do I want to go back to New Mexico? What was it?
There's a lot of options.
There's a lot of options. And so I sat down with a pen and paper, and this was the start of what I called my mission statement. And then we'll go back to the Christmas thing afterwards, but I sat down and was like, okay, what do I really want to do in my life? I had 3 options. One was go back into society, in the world, willingly for the first time. I always had a bit of a sense that I felt a bit trapped. I was like, why am I here? Why am I in Australia? Why am I forced to do all these things? And so, go back willingly for the first time. I didn't even know that was an option. I was like, okay, if I go back, it'll be willingly, right? Stay in the monastery, take up monkhood. That was a genuine option.
Was it?
It was a genuine option. And the third one was go and live in an off-grid community somewhere, live naturally, grow your own food, live with the land, do some natural building in a community that already exists, so I didn't have to start one myself. And so I really contemplated, what do I really want to do? And so I wrote down, what's the only thing that I really want? And so I wrote a bunch of things down, and I realised that it was an absolute megalithic effort to achieve. However, I had a bit of a profound moment. If it's the only thing that I want, even if it requires a, enormous Herculean effort of some sort, if it's the only thing I want, then by default it's worth it. It's worth the effort. By default. If it's the only thing you want, nothing else is worth it. That's what I thought.
Couldn't agree more.
And so I thought, if it's the only thing that I want, then it has to be worth it, even if it is a ridiculous amount of effort and work. And so I got the what, and then I came up with the whys. Why do I want to do this? Wrote them all down. And I realised once you get the why down pat, the how becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, because the first that's the big part of the puzzle. That requires mindful, conscious effort of getting out of your mundane life of like, I'm doing this because I kind of fell into it, or I'm kind of good at it, so it's kind of working for me, but it's not something that I wake up going, yeah, fuck yeah, I really want to do this.
Exactly.
So having that and coming up with that is really hard. And the fact that we have to do that for 17-year-old kids or 15-year-old kids that are in high school, it's a big ask.
It's a big ask. It's a huge ask. And so, yeah, I basically sat down with a pen and paper and really, really went through it. And what I realised is that when you're doing something that's bigger than yourself, like if you're only doing things for yourself, selfishly, if there's a time where you're not feeling confident, you're self-confident, you don't like yourself, all of a sudden those goals are gone because you don't care anymore. It's like, well, I don't really give a fuck. I'm not really that good of a person. Then what's the motivation if it's just you? But if you're doing something that's for someone else, motherhood, selflessness, or if you're doing something that's bigger than yourself, for your community, for your family, for your world, for the environment, something that's bigger than you, for God, whatever it is, if you're doing something that's bigger than you, then no matter how you feel, you keep going because it's bigger than you.
It's exactly the same theory, like not exactly the same, but the same concept of like training with a gym partner. You will when you're going to the gym every day by yourself, Like if some days you just can't be bothered going, or there's something happening, you're like, you're just letting down me.
Yeah.
If you've made a time to catch up with someone to go to the gym, you know that you can't let them down. So they're that force of doing it. That selflessness and being of service, that is the ultimate goal.
It is.
Being of service to your community, to your family, to someone who means so much to you. There's no other greater motivation.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why it's really important to get your why. Once the why's there, that's your fuel, like that's your energy. If it's for your family, for your community, if it's to help people, that why is so strong. No matter how you feel about yourself, you're going to go. That's what discipline is. Motivation is a terrible motivator. Motivation's shit. Motivation,
it doesn't exist.
No, motivation is terrible. Motivation is waiting till you have the energy, feel good enough to do it. And it's like, when's that going to happen? You're going to work out once a month. But if you've got discipline and drive, no matter how you feel, you do it. And so, but that creates a why. And so then I started doing the how. How do I get there? And so I wrote a few parts how to get there. Oh, it didn't really work. And because all right, I've been doing mindfulness now, one task at a time, for 3 weeks at this point. And so the way that was described by Ajahn Brahm is, let's just say your mind has 100 volts of energy, right? Or like 100 volts of like a flashlight. And so when you're thinking about something or focusing on something, you've got a light that illuminates the object. If you're thinking about two things at once, the light splits 50 volts and 50 volts. If you're thinking about four things, 25, 25, 25. And yeah, you're looking at more things, but it's a bit dimmer, so you're not getting a full picture. But if you're putting it all the way to 100 volts once again, like a unified light or a laser, you get a really strong focused picture on that one object at a time, right? And so, but it also energizes the mind too. There's more energy there, and I definitely noticed that. So right now I'm quite clear at this point while I'm writing everything down, and I realized when I read this again, when I go back into the grind, back into the routine, that I can trust me now because I'm pretty clear now. I'm not going to be so clear when I jump back into the thing that's outside of here. And so I wrote down the how, and the how actually required me to go back into the world and do some things. And so that's what I decided to do. And I was like, the path is not as sexy as I imagined it. It's quite a grind. I've got to do a lot of things I don't want to do. But if it's the only thing I want, if that's how the goal is going to be met, then I'm going to do it. Then something interesting happened when I came back, is I started doing these things that I thought were a grind. But because I had a specific path and I knew what it led to, these things were precursors to the goal. They didn't feel like a grind anymore. Isn't that interesting?
That's beautiful.
It didn't feel like a grind because I knew why I was doing it. And because I was willingly back in society for the first time ever, I had a sense of power and a sense of freedom because I want to be here now. And when you have that specificity and you make a decision about what you want to do, you make a decision, all of a sudden confusion almost leaves your life. You know what I mean? Because there's no you're not wondering about what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And so sometimes even if you make a decision, I feel like sometimes, perfect inaction isn't as good as imperfect action. Imperfect action, you always need reflection. But when you take action, even if it's not perfect or if you're not quite ready, like the 70-30 rule, if you get 70% of the information you need, even though you want 100% before you make a move, and you have that what is it? There's a particular 2 words that rhyme. Anyway, don't worry about it. You end up getting analysis paralysis.
Yes, there you go.
Cheers to the brain working. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
If you go past 70%, you do 70% of the information that you need, and then what ends up happening is, even though you're nervous to make the decision because you don't know enough, when you take action, the action shows you what you need next. Because you hit a wall, you hit a physical wall. Mm-hmm. I can't move further. And then it tells you what you need, and then you reflect again. Mm-hmm. Because if you're reflecting the whole time, and you don't know anything about the path, you're making up scenarios that don't even exist.
That's so true. That's literally how I felt about starting this podcast. I was like, but it's not perfect. But I'm like, I have everything to go.
What percentage did you get to?
Probably 70, I reckon.
70?
Yeah, cheers. Probably 70.
Yeah.
I reckon, because I got everything. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew my why. I knew how I was going to do it. I knew everything. It was just, you know, how am I going to be? How am I going to get guests? It was just all these different things that I didn't know until I actually did it.
Wow.
So yeah, here we are.
Congrats.
This is the 13th episode, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here. Is this 13 part 1 and 2?
This is 12 part 2.
12 part 2, which is 13. Okay, cool.
There you go.
Awesome. So, heading back, decisiveness, specificity, not feeling like it was a grind anymore. But I realised, what happens if my goals change throughout the year? What do I do? So then I started dedicating my Christmas time, as you know, going away for 3 days. I didn't really like anything about Christmas. I didn't like Christmas Eve. Didn't really like Christmas, and I didn't like Boxing Day. So I was like, those are the 3 days I'll take off.
Boxing Day's the worst.
Leave the madness
Yeah.
and come back when it's all over. Everyone's like, oh, you don't want to celebrate Christmas? It's so great, blah, blah, blah. And then they come back, and I was like, how's Christmas? They're like, oh. It was intense. It was so intense. I don't feel rested. How about you? I was like, I feel great. Like, I'll come with you next year. I was like, come down. And so I basically turned this into a little bit of a tradition for me, where I'd go away for 3 days, Christmas Eve, Christmas, Boxing Day. I would fast for 3 days, just get very clear out in the bush by myself, find water for myself, no food out there, and just do my mission statement again. And so I would set up the camp, day 1. Then day 1 at night time, I would think about the previous year. So I'd make a fire, think about the previous year that happened. I created like a bunch of questions that I asked myself, and you got to be brutally honest. You got to be very uncomfortable. Did I achieve everything I wanted to? And so I've got like lists. I did that. I didn't do that. Oh, that was probably a little bit unrealistic of an expectation. I'll change it next year. And so that's why it's got to be developed every year. And so have I been a good person? Have all my relationships and work relationships been good? If not, why not? Was it my fault? Was it their fault? So you look at the last year. How did it go? You do basically a yearly review. Day 2 is the next year. What do you want to achieve the next year? And you take inspiration of the previous year. I'd like to try and do that again. I'd like this again. I'd like this again. Short-term, long-term goals. And then the third day is a bit of writing it all out a little bit neater, because you're just trying to scribble, writing it out neater, and then completely letting it go, stop thinking about it, and then go on a big hike and just relax for the rest of the day. And then feed yourself that night, head back the next morning.
What do you find the hardest and the most challenging part of those 3 days?
Well, you know when you're camping and you've got a lot more time on your hands?
Yeah.
A lot of the time goes to preparing food. A few meals a day, prepping food, getting the fire going, cooking, chopping,
Talking.
eating at night, talking. And so when there's no food involved, there's even more time.
Wow.
And you just stand there with your stick going, okay, so...
And you're alone.
And you're alone, you're detoxing, you're fasting, you're writing down, you're getting very vulnerable with yourself too. And so you get very clear though. The first few days the second day is very uncomfortable, because you're peeling off layers. You've gone through a whole year. It's like the end of year. It's your end of the year. It's the time when you're supposed to relax. And you're basically trying to wind down off that in 3 days. And so the second day is quite tough, trying to peel off those society layers.
How many times did this question pop up into your head? Should I just go home?
A few times, yeah. A few times. But I've over the years now, I've actually refined the mission statement process, and I've actually taken a few of my friends through it now. Great.
And they come. You don't. They've never come with you.
No one's allowed to come with me.
I've
got to be alone.
This is a.
It's not that I don't want to, but you have. It's better to be alone.
Yeah. Oh well, your whole schedule will go out the window.
Exactly. But I hosted the mission statement for people to go through.
That's great.
And just getting really clear on what they want to do. what their goal is, what their purpose is. And it's like, do you want to do what you really want to do, or do you not? Because if you do, then it's going to be a lot of effort. Make the decision, make it happen. Otherwise, don't even bother.
Yeah, that's
Don't
beautiful.
bother. And so yeah, it's definitely, well, from some of the accounts that my friends have said, it's been very helpful.
Great.
I know it's been probably the most important tool for me ever in terms of drive, discipline. And on the way home, I go to Officeworks, get it laminated, and I put it in the shower.
Do you?
Yeah, so every time I have a shower now, you basically, every time you shower, it's a bit of a cleanse, a bit of a reset.
Yeah, you're washing away.
Washing away, you always feel good after a shower. And so you read in the shower, and so every time you're in that bit of a more relaxed subconscious state, you read the mission statement, everything that you wrote. And so it's like fuel. It's almost like topping up fuel. 98 premium something.
For that drive and
Yeah.
purpose.
For sure, because when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the routine and you're in the madness, how many times when you make goals, you're like, why am I really doing this? Do I really need to be doing this? I can just relax. Let's just chill. Fuck it. I'm dropping it. But when you've got the mission statement, you're looking at your why, and it's for family, for friends, for something bigger than you, you're like, why am I doing this? And you read and you're like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. So it's a constant reminder.
Yeah.
And so your drive and discipline just never goes away. Because, I don't believe that people fail. I believe that like a system fails. And one thing that really helped me was James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Have
Great
you read
book.
It? Unbelievable. There was one example that he used in there. It's like when you walk into someone's lounge room, which way are the couches facing? Facing the TV.
Yes, always.
And so what happens when you go in there?
You're going to watch TV.
Why? Because you've made it easy to watch TV. You've actually made it so easy that, you've got the remote there too. And so even if you're trying to chat, right, let's just say there's a TV there and we're chatting, eventually we'll face the TV and just watch TV.
You can't help it. The remote's right there.
Yeah.
It's very hard not to.
You've set yourself up for success to watch TV.
Correct.
So the idea is, can you set up your entire life to make it easy for you to do the things that you want to do?
It's beautiful.
In your life. So for example, if your lounge room didn't have couches or TV, it had mats, monkey bars, gym equipment. If you went in there to chat, eventually you'd just start doing Ninja Warrior training. Eventually.
That's it.
And so can you set up your routine so it makes your goals easier to do?
That's what I used to always do with the yoga room at our old place. I used to always just sit in there, and eventually I'd just be doing something on the mat, whether it was stretches or a little workout or actual yoga.
Yep.
It was always movement. I always went in there with 0% energy, but within 15 minutes I was doing something.
Yep.
And felt always amazing for it.
Yeah, and that's the idea. And so with that in correlation with the mission statement, it's very, very hard not to just make it happen and keep going.
That's really great. So, did you want to talk a little bit about your new venture that's happening at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So
is this your big going to what you really want in life? Is this a big part of it, or is this a stepping stone?
It's a stepping stone.
Okay.
And so I realised I wanted to, if I'm going to work, I want to do something that I'm passionate about, and something to do with helping the environment, with relinquishing toxins from the world. Because every year I'm making changes to my health, going a little bit more extreme every year, and so I don't really allow toxins into my diet at all. And so I'm a big fan on things like pure ingredients, etc., etc. And so being an avid camper, hiker, going on bushwalks, being out in nature lots, I noticed an issue that was frustrating me, and I basically turned that problem, rather than complaining about it, into a solution, because I actually wanted to find another option. It didn't exist, and so I ended up creating it myself with a business partner, Brother Simon. Yeah.
Amazing. Do we want to talk about what this product is?
So, being out camping, hiking, on walks, you'd see a lot of things like wipes and toilet papers in the bush, and I would take wet wipes out with me because they're amazing when you're out in the bush. I'd take biodegradable ones with me, and they were the best option that was out at the time. And then as I'm walking, you're seeing white wipes in the bush everywhere around camping areas, and it just didn't look out of place.
Very much so.
And I was contributing to it too. I was, doing the classic, because I when I camp relatively extreme in some cases. I'd, dig a hole and bury kind of guy. And so I was putting white wipes in the soil and burying them, and I was like, I wonder if that's actually okay. And so I realised that they're biodegradable, but they're not compostable. So they break down, or some of them don't, but they break down and they disappear from your site. However, the ingredients in there do become envirotoxins. So I was using biodegradable bamboo wipes. I'm obviously not going to mention what company I was using. I'm not here to throw any companies under the bus. And I realised that bamboo isn't actually white when it's processed, and so I tried to look for and I realised I wanted to discover what the ingredients were. Do they break down? Do they disappear? And then I looked at bamboo and white bamboo, and if any bamboo is white, it means it's bleached. And pretty much, I'd say 95+% of the time, it's bleached with chlorine bleaching, which actually creates dioxins, which is, according to the EPA, one of the worst chemicals that humans have ever invented. World Health Organization a long time ago it's in the dirty dozen, dioxins.
Is it really?
In the dirty dozens of chemicals in the world. It's in the top 12. And reason is because they're called POPs, POPS.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds cute. It's not. It's persistent organic pollutants, which they're like basically indestructible molecules. And so they get into the soil, they get into the waterways, they go into animals, we eat animals, and basically they store in our body, the top of the food chain, they store in our body, and they cause an absolute myriad of problems, from cancers to tumours to like Alzheimer's, just like a lot of crazy things. Dioxins were actually one of the reasons why Agent Orange was so bad in the Vietnam War. And so it's a big problem that will become more popular in the future. I'd say it's on par with like microplastics, which will become more prevalent soon. Mm-hmm. But dioxins I did quite a bit of research into them, and I really wanted to find another option that wasn't there, and there wasn't anything out there.
So obviously, mums are wiping their babies' bums and stuff with this stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so was I. Sorry, I'm not trying to say that
No, well,
I'm more important than a baby. I'm trying to say that I was using them too.
We all were.
And this was more selfish. I hadn't thought about a business idea at the time. I just wanted to make sure if I was burying wipes into the land that I loved, I wanted to make sure that it actually broke down into compost and not leaving envirotoxins. And at this point, I was like, not leaving dioxins. So that became a bit of a passion for me in terms of trying to rid that kind of bleach from my life personally. And it's not saying that all bleach is bad, and there are ways that people water bleach or oxygen bleach, etc. However, it's very rare. And if you don't know, if it doesn't say, it's most likely chlorine bleach. So as a general rule, I just like to avoid that anyway. And so once I realised that when you look at raw bamboo pulp, it's actually brownish. And so I tried to look for some options and it wasn't there. And so I decided to create it myself. Me and Brother Simon. Brother Simon was in studying construction management, project management, and he was also frustrated with a lot of the environmental efficacy of the industry, and basically wanted to pursue a passion too. He's a bit of a naturalist too, and so we teamed up to create a new product called Eco Wipes, which is all unbleached, compostable bamboo fibre. At the moment, we've got wipes, but we've got toilet paper, paper towels. Our main idea is to have a zero waste model, so no soft plastic packaging, nothing goes in a landfill in the whole process, and making sure that everything's compostable. We really want to get rid of dioxins. We want to make that very clear to the world that it's something that we should rid. And I do think within like 5-10 years it'll be something that we all know as a society that it's that we should keep that away from our lives.
Well, before you, I've never heard of the word.
Yeah. And so it was really interesting because we pioneered a new system of wipes. I'm not trying to plug myself, but I want to just talk about how we came up with it. So when you think about wet wipes, you've got 3 main elements to the wet wipes. You've got the material, you've got the packaging, and you've got the formula. So if any one of those are out of order or not in coincision with nature, it can cause absolute havoc. It can wreak havoc on the environment and our health. And so we had some things that we wanted, and then we had some things that we would not do. We had some no-nos. No soft plastics, no nasty preservatives, and no bleach, and zero waste. And it's like, how do we create wet wipes? How do we do that? And it's like, okay, maybe we can do hard containers, but then they're going to be really expensive. People are going to go from paying for some of the best wipes, $7 to $8 per wipe, to about $15 to $20 for 80 wipes, wet wipes. But then you still have to store the wipes, so you actually need preservatives. And we worked with chemists. We came up with our own formulas. And if you're storing it on a shelf for a long period of time, you need strong preservatives. And so it can become a real issue if you don't have them, but a real issue if you do have them, for the skin, for babies, etc., etc. And so it's almost impossible to have very, very gentle preservatives and long storage time. So it's like, how can we completely change that around? And so we'd be holding a ball and just like throwing it to each other, trying to think of ideas around it. And so we realized that we wanted reusable dispensers, so you can put wipes in. And then we thought that the only way to have no preservatives is to have the formula separate. So you'd purchase a dispenser, you'd have the roll of wipes, bulk. We realised that was the only way to actually make sure that it was cost efficient too, is to do it in a bulk size, where rather than getting 80, you're getting 350. So it ends up being quite cost efficient.
Ours last months.
Yes.
And we use them multiple times a day.
Yeah, especially with babies. You would have gone through heaps. And so, rather than 5 soft plastic landfill packets, you're basically just refilling.
Yeah, you purchase it once and you just keep filling it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and so we realised that if you can purchase the formula separate, and whoever's using it, the client or the person who's bought the wipes, puts the formula in themselves, then you don't need preservatives because there's no storage time on the shelves. And so that was the system we created, and now we've got quite a few products coming out as well, but it's all going to be, zero waste. It's all going to be unbleached, dioxin free, and we're learning. We're constantly learning, and every year we're going to, ensure that we have better quality. Obviously, the bigger we get, the more money that we have. We're going to be doing more regeneration projects, a lot more donations, and obviously just constantly making sure we get better. We could have made money way earlier if we just did things the way that they were already. But we had no-nos. We were kind of terrible business people because we're strong environmentalists. And so if you're trying to do things properly, you got to either sacrifice money for a bit, sacrifice time, and then try and educate people on why there's a better way to do it.
Well, and making sure that obviously you're well educated so that you can come across with this information and say it in a way where you do feel like it's making sense and that you're coming from a place of concern. And being an environmentalist, it's so crucial.
For sure.
But I just want to say as well, like this story that you said in last 10, 15 minutes, not even 10 minutes, in a way where, you felt like you achieved so much. However, I was a they've seen the back end stuff, and there was so many things that went wrong and so many things that went right and so many sacrifices, and it's still like over and over again. And I just want to say I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
It's been really beautiful to watch you start something from zero, from the ground up.
Thank you so much.
So it's really beautiful seeing this journey that you've been on, and yeah, just the person that you've become. You've completely transformed.
It's been a tough journey. Like, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, we're doing this for greenwashing purposes, or we're doing this to you know, just for money itself. But it's like, man, if people understood what we had to go through to make this happen. Like I said, we could have made money if we just shortcutted everything, but to do things properly because we were environmentalists before business people, and so we had to develop business acumen later on. But first, it started off with morals and ethos, and so we had to sacrifice, you know, 5 years of making absolutely no money, and the money going from our other business, working hard, laboring every day, going into this, and it's just like we're not touching anything. And so it took just so long before it started taking off, and a lot of sacrifices had to be made. But otherwise I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be in business I wouldn't be doing it any other way.
Yeah.
And so it's been a great journey.
It's been really beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
But what's happening next what's plans in the near future for Floyd and Eco Wipes?
Yeah, so basically we are going to be releasing more products. We're going into toilet papers, paper towels. It's all going to be unbleached, zero waste packaging, etc. And we're going to be doing linking up with a regeneration project company, where they're doing tree planting. They're going to be doing environmental regeneration, and we're going to be investing a lot of Eco Wipes money into there too, and partnering up with them and getting into larger scale environmental regeneration projects ourselves too.
Great.
So yeah, big plans. But yeah, absolutely look forward to it. And just going back to the discipline as well, having the mission statement as well, it becomes fun. The grind becomes fun, and so yeah, there's really no time to waste when you're doing that much.
No.
So yeah, been great.
That's amazing. And where can people find you and your business?
Don't really want to plug, but since you asked. So you go to Instagram, you can go to Eco Wipes Official. The website is eco-wipes.com.au. And yeah, I don't really have social media, so you can't find me. This is the only place you're going to find me.
You're a nomad.
Yeah, eventually I'll probably have to promote myself a little bit more, but I don't like photos. Took me a while to even get comfortable with that thing looking at me.
You did very well.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It's been really fun.
It's been great.
It's been great.
Part 2, we made it happen.
We made it happen. It's been amazing. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, wherever you're listening from. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you received a few good takeaways from it. If anybody popped into mind while you were listening, please send it across to them. This will really help promote my podcast. To follow everything that I'm doing at the moment, head to my Instagram page, Holistic Healing with Steph Marie. Thanks again, guys. Have the best day, and I'll see you on the next episode for more conversations that are raw, honest, and